My birth mother was actually pregnant with twins, and they had successfully aborted my twin, but I had survived that day.
Claire, I've been so looking forward to this interview. Thank you so much for coming out.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
When I first heard about your story, I thought, this is a story every single person needs to know about. And so I'm excited to get into it. First of all, what was your upbringing like?
So growing up, I came from a Christian home. My parents were missionaries. We lived in Mexico and Costa Rica for about a year each growing up. And so I grew up in a home that told my sister and I very young that we were adopted. It was a really positive thing. We knew that we were wanted, chosen, and loved. And we knew that we had birth mothers and that one day we might have the possibility of meeting our birth mothers, but that no matter what we found out when we met our birth mothers, that who we were never changed, that we were wanted, chosen, and loved. And so I had this incredible upbringing of just being really secure in who I was as an adopted child, as a sister, and it was incredible.
What inspired your parents to pursue adoption?
My parents tried for years to have children naturally, and they weren't able to. The doctors told them that there was a 1% chance of them having children naturally.
Wow.
And so they knew when they found that out that the other way to create a family for them was through adoption. And so they dove right into it. They called an adoption agency in Oklahoma City, and they adopted me, and then a couple years later they adopted my sister.
So what inspired you when you first felt, I want to reach out to my birth mother, or I want to find my birth mother?
My sister Rachel had met her birth mother first because she had an open adoption, and my parents had known her birth mother, and so they were able to call her on the phone and say, Rachel's ready to meet you. And so my sister, after she met her birth mother, I had the opportunity to meet her birth mother. And she came to Austin where we live, and we had dinner together. And I remember sitting at this dinner table with my sister and her birth mother and looking at them and thinking, gosh, they look so much alike. They act so much alike. I mean, they had the same shoe size, all of these things that my sister and I had never experienced growing up being adopted, all these similarities. And I realized this woman, my sister's birth mother, she gave me my sister. Not only that, but she completed our family.
Wow.
And what a selfless choice she made for us. And so I thanked my sister's birth mother that day for giving me my sister, because I knew my life wouldn't be the same. And in that moment, I realized, oh wait, I have a birth mother, and maybe it doesn't look like what my sister's adoption looked like, or maybe the story won't go the same way. But regardless of how it goes, she deserves to hear thank you. And so I made the decision that day to go home and talk with my family and decide if we would pursue meeting my birth mother.
So had it been then, Claire, a closed adoption? So there'd been no contact with your birth mother?
My adoption was closed,
okay.
Yes.
But you had the option to reach out, of course, or try to find her as you got older.
I was 20 at this point when my sister met her birth mother, and so with a closed adoption at 18, you or your birth mother can decide, I would like to try to reach out, and then either one is given the choice to say yes or no. And so I decided that I would call my adoption agency and give my birth mother the option of whether she wanted to talk with me or meet me, or how that would look for us.
So how were you feeling during that process? I mean, was it nerve-wracking, or did it feel natural for you? That's a huge deal, a big life moment.
I'm an introvert, so it was very scary. I thought, what's it going to be like? I mean, is she going to want to meet me? Is she going to like me? Is she going to connect with me? Am I going to connect with her? What if the story isn't what we expected? What if it doesn't go how my sister's reunion with her birth mother went? So I had a lot of lot of emotions and a lot of questions going into meeting my birth mother. But again, I went back to, I know who I am. I mean, I have this incredible family, and I have these incredible parents and a sister who I grew up with, and it couldn't have been any better. And so the questions were okay, because I knew that no matter what, my story wasn't going to change.
I think a lot of people aren't as familiar with open versus closed adoption. So you're saying with the closed adoption at 18, either you or the birth mother can reach out to try to make contact, but they also, one or the other, can say no.
Yeah.
So when you reached out, was that a sense you had whether she would say no or yes, or was it something you were concerned about?
I knew it was a possibility that she could say yes or no, but I really just reached out to her because I wanted to thank her, because I had had an incredible life, an incredible family because of her. And so whether it was through me or through the caseworker, I just wanted my thank you to get to her.
So when you found out that she was willing to meet, walk us through that first meeting, what you were feeling and what happened.
I was so nervous. I was excited.
And where was it? Was it in Oklahoma?
We met in Dallas in an in-between spot, and in a friend's home right down the street from where my parents brought me home from the hospital. And so really significant spot for us to meet. But my birth mother brought her husband and her two of her children. Wow. She has 3 daughters. I have 3 half-sisters through her. And
so you met them all for the first time?
She brought them. And I brought my parents and my sister, and I remember setting up for when she would arrive, and we were like, okay, what music do we play? What do we cook? What do we say or do or not do? I mean, there were so many factors that played into that first meeting. And I joke that it didn't even matter what background music we played, because the second I opened that door, I didn't hear anything else. I mean, I just looked at her, and she looked so much like me. Or I guess I should say I looked so much like her. We were exactly the same height and exactly the same body type, and we instantly just hugged and we connected. I mean, it was like I had known her my entire life, but I hadn't. And what I didn't realize was that in that moment, I was afraid, and I was scared of what I would find out, but she was even more afraid, and because she was about to tell me something that would change my life forever and our relationship forever. But she chose not to tell me that in that moment, that day. And so we enjoyed our first day together. I was able to bring pictures of my life, of my childhood, and share those with her. And we laughed, we cried. We wanted to continue our relationship together. And so we set a second meeting up that day for us to continue to get to know each other, and for me to be able to continue to thank her for what she had done for me. Our second meeting was 2 months later, and our second meeting I flew to Oklahoma, where she still lived, where I would have grown up if she had kept me, and I spent a couple days with her and her family in their home.
Got it. So on that first meeting, did you guys even talk about the circumstances of your adoption or her pregnancy with you? I mean, was that part of the conversation, or was it just more connecting with each other?
The first meeting was definitely just connecting with each other. We really we're just getting to know each other. It is a little bit awkward when you meet your birth mother that's done this incredible thing for you, but you really don't know them at all. And so I think the first meeting, we were just trying to figure out, like, okay, what does this mean to have a relationship with each other? How do we make this work? And I definitely wanted to make her feel like I loved her and I appreciated all that she had done for me. And so it was pretty light and just joyful, that first meeting.
So when you went out 2 months later to her hometown, or to where she lived, that's when you heard her share this big secret. Walk us through what that was like for you, what happened, and what she shared.
So 2 months went by, and I had bought this gift for her. I knew I was going to Oklahoma. I knew that I would be seeing her again. I knew that I wanted to make it a point this time to thank her and really just tell her, gosh, you were the best mother for me because of what you did for me, because you gave me my family. Because I knew, deep down she had to believe things that weren't true about herself, like maybe she wasn't a good enough mother because she had placed me for adoption. But I wanted her to know, no, you're an incredible mother because of that. And so I gave her this gift, and it was a ring and a necklace with my birthstone on it. And I just wanted it to remind her of how special she was, how incredible she was. And so on the plane, I flew from Austin to Oklahoma. And on the plane, I had this card, and I had the gift, and the card was blank. And I thought, where do I even begin? How do I sum up how grateful I am, how incredible my life has been? And I didn't know. And so I just wrote, thank you for choosing life for me. And I remember sitting on that plane and thinking, do any of these people around me even know? Can they even comprehend like what I'm about to go do? I'm about to go visit my birth mother and intentionally thank her for being who she is, for giving me my life and my family. And in that moment, looking back, I realized I didn't even know in that moment what I was about to walk into, what I was about to find out. And so I landed that day in Oklahoma, and we had this incredible first day together of our second meeting. And that evening she was sitting in her lazy boy chair in her living room, just we probably had our pajamas on, just kind of relaxing that night. And I thought, okay, well, this is a good time. I'll give her that gift. And so I went and got that gift for her, and she opened it, and she cried really happy tears as she saw the ring and the necklace. And she said, Claire, would you put this on me? So I was standing behind her in her chair, and I was fastening her necklace. And I watched as she opened the card and read the words, thank you for choosing life for me. And I watched as instantly she changed. I mean, her demeanor changed, her tears changed. They went from happy to sad instantly. And I thought, what's so sad, what's so awful about this gift that I just gave to my birth mother? And she said, Claire, there's something I need to tell you. And so we walked into this back room, and she had grabbed my hand while we were walking, and I remember she was trembling. And I was confused in that moment. I had no idea that she would tell me what came out of her mouth next. So we sat on this bed and we faced each other, and at this point the tears are just streaming down her face. And she said, Claire, I was 13. And she began to describe being 13 years old and pregnant with me, and how she was scared. And her mother said, well, the best choice for you is to have an abortion. And so my birth mother said that she was driven that day to a local abortion clinic, and she had a D&E dismemberment abortion at 20 weeks. And they told her, they'll fix her problem. They told her that she would never have to think about it again, that she could just go home and pretend like it never happened. In fact, that's what her mother told her that she needed to do. She said that the abortion doctor never even spoke to her that day, never asked her what she would have wanted. The choices were made for her that day. And so my birth mother had that abortion and went home and tried to get back to normal, but they realized pretty quickly within a few weeks that her belly was still growing and that something wasn't right.
So she was 13 years old, and she told her mom, her parents didn't find out she was pregnant until she was 20 weeks along. And then they took her right to an abortion clinic. This was you. This was the pregnancy that you were a part of. And she has the abortion, and then it's not over. How did they even find that out? When did she notice that she was still pregnant?
She said that about 4 weeks went by, and She knew that she was leaking fluid. She knew that she was still sick and that her belly was still growing, and so she asked her mother to take her back to the doctor. And they did, and they told her that day that her abortion had been successful on one baby, but that I had survived her abortion. So my birth mother was actually pregnant with twins, and they had successfully aborted my twin, but I had survived that day. And so my birth mother was sent to Kansas to seek a late-term abortion, but because of the amniotic fluid leaking, because of the risk to my birth mother's life, they couldn't do that, another late-term abortion on my birth mother. And so she was dropped off at the adoption agency until she delivered me at 30 weeks.
So they told her that having a second late-term abortion on you now would be more dangerous for her than if she were to wait until she could deliver you.
Yeah, the doctor in Kansas did. The doctor in Oklahoma said, oh, they'll take care of it. I mean, people in Kansas, they, at that point, they did every type of abortion that there was, and they never turned anyone away. But they believed that it wasn't that it was risky for my life, it was that it was risky for my birth mother's life. And so they said, you're about to deliver this baby, and this baby's very small, and so you need to go home and be on bed rest and try to make it as long as you can. And so she did.
And you were 6 months at that point, 24 weeks?
Yes.
Wow. And you're, and you know, before we go further, because it's just incredible. I mean, twice targeted, and here you are, so beautiful and full of life. And at 20 weeks, when that abortionist took the life of your twin, can you share more about what that, you mentioned a D&E abortion, what happens during a D&E abortion that was done to your twin?
So a D&E abortion, my understanding from physicians that I've consulted with is that during that procedure, they pull the baby apart and out in pieces. So they pull them apart limb by limb. And then they end up crushing the head and pulling that out as the last part of that abortion procedure. And so that is what was done to my twin, and that is what should have been done to me if the abortion had been successful.
It's incredible. So when you're hearing this from your mom, your biological mom, you're sitting here on the bed with her talking to her about it, what was going through your mind? What were you feeling?
You know, when I was born, I was born at 30 weeks, and I weighed 3 pounds, 2 ounces, and I had a dislocated hip, and I had club feet. And so I had body casts up until I was 2 years old. And so in my mind, this is not only not what I expected to find out, but it's almost like putting back together the pieces of the puzzle of my life story, because we never knew, what caused those complications. We never knew why I was this premature baby. But I think I went home that day, and it was a process over years and years and years, even still today, of realizing that I survived something that was meant to take my life. But even bigger than that my life was protected and spared that day. And so my life and my children's lives and generation after generation in my line, that those lives are miraculous. And that was what I remember thinking that day was, my life's a miracle. There is a reason that I survived, and I don't know why right now. I don't know why I survived and my twin didn't, but I know that God protected my life, and I was willing to forgive my birth mother and love her in that moment, knowing that.
It's incredible. Well, look at what you're doing. You're sharing something that people just don't know. They don't know the beauty of adoption. So many people don't know what really happens during an abortion. When you were sitting on that bed with your mom and she tells you this, your twin killed at just 5 months. You tried to be killed at 6 months and they weren't able to do it. Now you were born with these complications. What did you say to her? How did you respond to her?
It's so blurry. Just thinking back, I felt like I was in this movie and almost like I was on the outside looking in. I don't think anybody that's adopted going into meeting their birth mother would ever think, okay, I'm going to find out that I was meant to be aborted, but I survived. And so it's a little fuzzy to me still, but I know that I hugged her, and I know that even if I didn't tell her in that moment that I forgave her, that in my heart I knew that I did. And I remember telling her that I was so sorry, because I felt like she was the victim in this story. I don't know what it's like to be a twin, and I don't know that I will ever grasp what I'm missing until I get to heaven one day and I get to join, to be together with my twin again. But I saw that day what that abortion did to my birth mother. I saw it in her eyes, I saw it in her tears, and I saw it in how she had kept this secret for 21 years, and it had been buried for years and years and years. And when she spoke it again, when she told me about her abortion again, it was like she was reliving it again. And it was painful, and it was messy. And I hope that I never have to see that again in anyone's eyes, in anyone's story. And so I know that in that moment, I told her I was just so deeply sorry for what abortion had done for her, and how the adults in her life and the doctors that were there that day, how they had failed her by not telling her that she was strong and that she was capable, because that's all she was looking for.
And no one talks about that. I mean, I feel like when it comes to teen pregnancy, the knee-jerk reaction is always abortion. Like, she's too young to have a baby, so she needs to have an abortion. But no one talks about what abortion does to that young teen mom, and then also how beautiful and healing it can be. I mean, no 13-year-old should be pregnant, but no one talks about how beautiful that baby can be, and also how painful that abortion is for these young moms. Did she, after this all happened, I mean, I'm sure your mind was spinning going back home, what was your communication like with her after you guys had that conversation, you found out about the story of her pregnancy and your birth?
The first few years were kind of rocky. I was a constant reminder every time she saw me or talked to me. I was a reminder of what had happened to her. I took her back. She said she could smell the abortion room again. She could hear the machines that were in that room, and it just took her back to a time that was extremely painful for her.
Was she awake during her abortion?
She was, yes.
So she felt the whole thing.
She
could experience the whole thing.
Yeah.
It's incredibly, incredibly traumatic. And so what was there a point where she was able to, is she still processing that trauma today? Has she been able to find healing?
She's found healing. So I have one biological daughter. My husband and I have 4 children together. And my daughter, who's 7, the day that I had her, began a journey of healing for both my birth mother and I, because my birth mother was now able to be a grandmother.
Wow.
To my daughter. And so my birth mother reached back out to me after I had my daughter, and we began to talk again. And then my birth mother has been able to share her story a couple times and hear from other people that have experienced abortion in some way, mostly not in the way that we have, but I have friends that are former abortion clinic directors and former abortionists, and women that have experienced abortion like my birth mother did, but their baby didn't survive. And she was able to hear how they found healing and how they were able to forgive them and experience the forgiveness of God. And so my birth mother, after hearing stories like that, was able to say, you know what, I want that, and I want to experience what it's like to find freedom and hope after an abortion. And so she's been working on that for a few years now, and it's been really neat to watch.
It's amazing how when people know they're not alone and they get to see that, you know, they think, oh, I'm the only one who went through this, or I can't talk about it, it's so shameful. talking about it with other people, and then connecting to the mercy that God has for all of us, and that other people have experienced that mercy, how it can change us and heal us.
Yeah, my birth mother, I told you how I initially shared just, I forgive you, and I'm not upset with you.
It's
but
incredible, Claire.
It was so hard for her to believe that, and to accept, like, okay, I could find healing, but God could forgive me for what I did. And not only that, but I could forgive myself. And I wasn't the right person to share that with her, and for to be able to maybe instill in her that she could find that. But she was able to find that in the hundreds of thousands of other people who have been hurt by abortion, and to realize that she's not alone. And that's all I really wanted for her when I heard her story.
I often hear that it's the struggle to forgive oneself when God is willing and ready to forgive, and you forgave her, which is so beautiful. And she was 13, as she was pushed into this by the people that should have been there fighting for both her and her babies, you and your little twin. Claire, people say that you don't exist. I know you've heard this because in the huge political debate that's always happening around abortion, there is this debate about the Born Alive Infants Protection Act, which was national legislation. It's also been at the federal and at the some state level, in trying to guarantee protection, safeguard measures for children that survive abortion attempts. And of course, unfortunately, you have the whole Democratic Party trying to shut those laws down, not wanting to have those laws go into effect. And so there's a heated debate, and I hear often in the media and from abortion advocates, well, there's no such thing as an abortion survivor. You're making this up. What do you have to say to them?
I've had the privilege this past year to be a part of a lot of the legislation for the Born Alive Abortion Survivors Protection Act. And it's been incredible because people say, you don't exist, and then we show up. And we show up and we're able to show the humanity of what that unborn child grows up to be, and what that abortion survivor grows up to be. And I'm a wife and a mother, and I have a successful career, and I enjoy my life. I'm so grateful for my life, for the family that I had through adoption. And so I enjoy being able to share not only my humanity with people, but to be able to join with other people who have survived abortions, like myself, other abortion survivors, and be able to tell people that we have names, and we have faces, and we have stories. That abortion survivor that is on the table and in the hands of the doctor, whether or not they want to provide medical care to that child, that survivor grows up to be somebody with a name. And we like to tell people, in fact, there was an ad recently that covered 14 abortion survivors. And their line that they used that's just so powerful is, choice is a person. And the abortion survivor is able to show that, because the life and the humanity and the survival of the abortion survivor, it tears apart every debate that is had on abortion through the experience of the abortion survivor, through the humanity of the abortion survivor. And so I really don't have to say a lot to people that say that I don't exist, because clearly you can see that I do.
It's incredible. And the conversation about abortion, it's so rarely about the people, the child, the human life that's involved. It's the euphemisms of choice or reproductive freedom, these positive sounding words. And when people, though, have that encounter, they see, how can you not? You look at your beautiful face. This is a beautiful human life.
Thank you. And
I'm just so grateful for the miracle of your life, because people just need to know. They don't know, so many, and they need to know. Do you ever feel, or do you ever think about your twin, about your brother or your sister, and when you think about them, what do you feel? What's that experience like, having survived your sibling?
I have a lot of mixed emotions, I guess, on that. On one hand, it's hard for me to imagine what I'm missing, because I haven't lived my life on this earth with my twin, even though I am a twin. But through talking with people who are twins, or who have twins, or who are related to twins, they share so often, like, gosh, I can't imagine what you've experienced, because I can't imagine my life without my twin, or I can't imagine my twins without each other. There's this incredible bond that twins share. And so I don't take that for granted, because I know that I knew my twin in the womb for 20 weeks. And I know that that day when my twin was ripped away, that I felt that. And I probably heard that. And in my adult life, I know that there has been something missing in my life. Probably one of the most significant people in my life is not here because of that abortion. When I was growing up, I used to ask, my parents say they don't remember me asking this, but maybe it was just thoughts that I had that I didn't necessarily share with them. But I used to think, why won't they adopt someone else? I mean, where is my brother? I'm supposed to have a brother. I mean, there's got to be a brother for me.
Wow.
And we don't know if my twin was a boy or a girl, but I do know that my parents wanted a boy. And my daddy wanted a son, and it would have been his only son. And so a lot of times I like to think, okay, my daddy does have a son, and I have my twin up in heaven waiting for me, and one day we'll get to meet him or her.
I think so.
But I share my story because even if I don't know what it's like to be a twin, nobody else should have to walk the face of this earth as an abortion survivor or as a twinless twin like I have. Every twin deserves the presence and the joy and that special bond with their twin. And so that's the reason why I share my story, is because I know what I'm missing through the stories of all the twins that I've encountered.
Do you, the act of abortion is so traumatic, and you shared a little bit about this already, but is there anything in your life, I know there's been research done about the experience of missing a sibling to abortion and how that can cause health problems, psychological problems. It can be very burdensome to the survivors, whether it was, like in your case, actually being in the womb with your twin, or just a sibling who was lost to abortion. So there's been research done on that. I know there's an organization called Hope Alive that does a lot of work with missing family member trauma. Do you have an experience of that, especially having been in the womb when your own brother or sister is being violently killed? I mean, these D&E abortions are incredibly violent and painful and horrific to these little ones. What has there been something like that for you?
Growing up, I was just raised on grace and hope and forgiveness. I can't count the ways how many times my parents showed forgiveness to me and told me about Christ's forgiveness for me, regardless of what I had done. And so because of how my parents raised me, I knew that God had forgiven my birth mother already. And I knew that I should too. And I knew growing up just what my parents had spoken over me and my sister, had told us about who we were, that we were wanted, chosen, and loved, not only by them, but by God. And so finding out that our story, maybe didn't look how we expected to, I knew that didn't change who I was, that God made me perfectly and that He wrote my story perfectly. And so I definitely know that my ability to respond to my birth mother with grace, with forgiveness, seeing that there is hope, and that I can trust in the big picture that God sees when I can't see it. I know that I owe that to my parents and how I was raised.
That's beautiful. And I think it's so important because there are people probably listening right now, and we know people, I mean, you know people, I know people. Abortion affects so many people, so many women and fathers who have children who have been aborted. And I think, buried under a lot of that, maybe just silence about it, or even some people still justifying it, is a lot of pain.
Yeah.
And what would be your message to those women out there, and men, but especially the women who've had abortions, whether they felt pressured or they went into it thinking, absolutely, I want to do this. What would be your message to them?
My birth mother held on to her secret for 21 years. And I know that when she told me about it, it began this healing journey for her. And she was finally able to breathe a little bit and to have this weight lifted off of her shoulders a little bit. Something that was her deepest, darkest, most painful secret has become one of the most life-changing things for her, in a good way, because she's been able to find healing and find forgiveness. And I want people to experience that. I want women to experience that, because God, He uses our most broken moments, our stories of where we see beauty come from ashes. He uses those moments in the most powerful way. God's strength shows up in our weakness. And if we can give our struggles and the things that haunt us and the painful things in our lives, if we can give it to Him and say, God, use this or heal this, He will. And I think back to a couple months ago when my birth mother came to see me speak for the first time. And it was one of the most scary moments for me. I mean, I would have to look her in the eye and share about her abortion and how it affected me and the reality of my birth story. And she would be reminded of all of this all over again. But I brought her on stage that day. And she grabbed my hand and we held our hands up. And I like to say that was our moment. Because in that moment, we were claiming victory over our story. We were claiming the redemption in our story. And if women that are watching this have experienced abortion, I want that for you. And it is possible, because Christ will one day come and make all things new, and nobody ever will experience the pain of abortion again. And He's done that for every single one of us that have been affected by abortion.
It's beautiful,
Thank
Claire. And it's so true. That's the hope, that this is not about perpetual condemnation or guilt or the pain, but that there is a triumph over all of that pain. When you're just walking around town, or you're just living your life, and are you ever reminded that there are people around you that think abortion's totally fine, that that's how they're voting, and that you are a living witness to how it's not? Does that ever strike you?
Yeah, I mean, I can turn the TV on and see the people that not only say that I don't exist, but say that I shouldn't exist, that abortion should have taken my life,
right,
because I'm imposing on their right to choose. But I like to ask people, what was my right as a woman? Because if their narrative is that a woman should have the right to choose, they're completely ignoring mine. And so I often remind myself, the people that are shouting their abortion and screaming for a woman's right to choose, they're doing that from a place of pain and regret, like you mentioned. And so even though it's hurtful to hear that, and it's hard to watch people walk around and parade for abortion rights, I have to gently remind myself that no, they're a person too. And I want them to listen to my voice. And so I need to appeal to theirs.
And love them, because it's amazing how much misinformation there is out there, and a lack of education and a lack of hope, quite frankly. You know, this idea that we need this thing, we need this violence in order for everything in life to work out, and there's always another way. There's always a better way. There are other abortion survivors. Do you know any of them? Have you talked with them? I know there's hundreds out there.
I have good friends that have a similar story to me, that have survived abortion attempts on their life, and it's been really neat to connect with them and just be able to see what we have in common, know that we're not alone. We all want to be seen and heard and cared about, and so it's been incredible to connect with them and realize, like, okay, the things that we have struggled with in our early childhood lives or as adults, with the health complications that a lot of us share, that is the result from the abortion attempt on our life, and that we can lean on each other in those moments of feeling like, okay, nobody can relate to my story, but there are people that can.
Claire, what do you see your mission in life? I mean, here you are, this incredible person, incredible story, and I'm so grateful that you sharing it with us. But how do you see going forward? I know I hear a rumor you have a book coming out next year. How do you see your mission in life?
Well, I'm not alone in my survival. There are people coming up to me on a weekly basis, a lot of times, that have similar stories to mine, that have survived abortion attempts on their life. And so I don't take it lightly that I have been given platforms to share my story, because I want to be able to be a voice for someone like me that has survived an abortion, but also for someone like my birth mother, who is desperately looking for someone to stand up for her, or someone like my daughter, who wouldn't be here if that abortion had successfully taken my life. And so my hope is that through my story and through the redemption in my story and the humanity of my existence, that I am able to not only meet people in the trenches, because when you're contemplating having an abortion, that's where you are. You are desperate enough to go to the trenches. I want to meet them there where they are, with loving open arms, and say, you can do this, you're worth it, and tell them what my birth mother desperately wanted to hear in her moment of weakness at 13 years old when she was pregnant, and to be able to give a voice to so many people that have different stories of how they've been affected by abortion, so that ultimately nobody else will experience abortion like we have, because it has hurt my family in a very deep way.
Well, Claire, you're doing that, and it is incredible and beautiful to see, and I'm so grateful that you came out here to share it with us and walk us through your story. Thank you so much.